What's next doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by chance. What's next happens when experience meets expertise, when data meets dollars, and when steel meets earth. What's next happens when the promising work of Pioneer's state-of-the-art research centers meets the unsparing challenges of more than 17,000 on-farm trials. Our ultimate goal is to bring the next seed breakthrough to your fields, because Pioneer isn't just our name, it's our mission. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Authority Strike Herbicide from FMC. One application of Authority Strike Herbicide delivers a powerful one-pass burn-off to start, followed by extended weed control later. See your local retailer today for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Yes, hello. Welcome to the February 29th, yes, the leap year edition of RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it is Thursday, which means the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. We have a fantastic show lined up for you today. So we're going to start here in Ontario. I've got Mark Torrey and Aaron Bowman. They're going to chat about what's happening on the farm this week. And then we're going to head to Manitoba to talk to Wilco VanMeijl and jump to Saskatchewan to hear from Chris Bauer. And then at the end of the show, I've got Ontario agronomist with Pioneer Seeds Canada, Greg Stops, to join me and talk about what farmers are talking about this week. Now, this week, really, and no surprise, the show, I'm sure, will be dominated by weather discussions because we've got just a wild week of weather that we've had to manage here across Canada. And as we sit today, we are in the middle of that just absolute iceberg. All right, so let's take a break. I'll be back with our first farmer right after this.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and this segment is all about Koch Agronomic Services. And joining me on the line is Tom Barry. What are nitrogen stabilizer considerations then under uncertain weather, particularly dry conditions, or persistent drought conditions?
Well, that brings in twofold, right? The first two times when you really want to be considering, like I said, are broadcast or shallow banded applications. The second consideration is drought. And the second consideration, even though we don't have a whole lot of snow right now, is if you are in an area that has moisture, is denitrification or leaching, even though leaching doesn't occur as much as people think it does in Western Canada. But that's when you want to use a product that has a nitrification inhibitor in it.
So remind us then, what products from Koch Agronomic Services should farmers be considering as they sit down to work through these scenarios?
So if it's wet or going to be a little bit more moist in the spring, you're going to want to use a dual inhibitor from Koch Agronomic Services. And if it's on the drier bias, you're going to want to use a urea inhibitor.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it's Thursday, and that means it is, of course, time for the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada, and we stop in at Woodsville, Ontario, with Mark Torrey. Mark, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you today, Lyndsey?
I'm doing well. Now, where is Woodsville, Ontario?
Well, actually, it's probably on the same latitude as Kinburn, if you really want to look at it. So we're just east central Ontario, about an hour and a half north of Toronto, nestled between Lake Ontario and the Canadian Shield.
Nestled. I don't know if you can always use that term based on some of the severe weather I'm sure you get being nestled there.
It's interesting. Today, presently, we are 10 degrees above freezing with rain, And the kids are at home today with no buses running because we're expecting a 20-degree temperature drop by tonight. So as we sit, I'm looking out the window of the office, and what's supposed to be my hockey rink is a giant parachute of plastic flowing in the wind right now.
Right. Yeah. It has been an odd winter, I think. For many of us, this is a very large system moving through that is, flash freeze warnings everywhere here in Ontario. A bit odd. And that actually, later, I'm going to ask you the question of the week, and it's somewhat related to that. But other than trying to keep your outdoor rink from blowing away, what has you busy this week?
Well, actually, yesterday was such a beautiful day. It almost felt like a late April day. You know, the ground was dry and cold, and you realized how much garbage and junk was laying around. So you started tidying up a little bit. I was actually looking at my seed drill at one point in the day, and then today I'm starting to wonder if I need to hook up the snowblower again for the rest of this week. So, the fields, it's really. It gets you inspired when you can actually start to see the residue and the crops out in the fields. Now my wheat looks a little bit brown right now, but again, I got to remind myself that it's only February. So I've got a long way to go before I really need to start worrying about what the crops are going to do.
Well, but also, and this is a conversation we're having this week, is with this warm up, and yes, we're going to have this dip of cold and then back to quite mild temps, it really does make it difficult to not start thinking that it's late March versus late February.
Yeah. I'm involved with our local community pasture here, and our pasture manager was texting me and saying, "Hey, should I start the frost seeding or not?" And I said, "Well, geez, how do you pass up a window like this? We're close enough, so might as well go get it out of the way, because you never know. The ideal window, we might have 3 feet of snow out there again."
Mm-hmm. I know. We're asking that same question about the frost seeding part, and I will say, I think based on, some pictures I've seen and those sorts of things, there's definitely, especially down in the south, there's definitely some farmers getting out the drill, not for, of course, the main crop, but for things like cover crop oats or filling in patches or, spinning on some red clover. Maybe it's too early, but I guess we're going to find out. Okay, so you're involved in the community pasture. What's your involvement there? Are you part of the management of that, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so the Victoria County Community Pasture is one of several community pastures in the province of Ontario that was set up by the ARDA program in the 1960s. So my father before me and myself, we've always had cattle on there over about a 60-year period. So I used to sit on the board of directors and eventually became the secretary-treasurer of the board. So this week, I'm just finishing up receiving applications for all the cattle that we put on there. And next month, we'll sit down and try to allocate the number of cattle that go on the pasture. So it's been a real great success story. The community pastures is really a unique setup in the province, and it's something that I'd really love to be able to expand it some more. But as we all know, the economics in cattle versus the economics in cash crop land prices, it's a difficult scenario to try to purchase more land.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if the last year maybe were duplicated for 5 years in some of the 50 cattle markets, or maybe the next 20, that might change things. But in looking at that, though, is it a pretty steady demand for the community pasture, or does demand far outweigh what you can put on in an average year? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, different pastures in different parts of the province, they all have a different management board, and they all have a different appetite from their local consigners. The Victoria pasture has always been oversubscribed. We always have to cut back. We always have more applications than what we can put on the pasture. But we do have some decent ground here as well, so we can stick with some higher stocking rates than some of the other pastures in the province. So we're pretty fortunate to have the land base that we do. And it's one large block of land, which makes managing the pasture a lot easier for our staff to do that as well. So we'll have, one full-time manager and two seasonal full-time staff managing over 1,300 head of cattle throughout the course of the summer. And it's been a tremendously successful program here.
Mm-hmm. It is very cool. I will say, out west, it's definitely very common and huge areas of land under community pasture programs, but definitely not something you hear about as much in Ontario. So it's super cool when we do get to talk about it, for sure. Now, do you do like cow-calf pairs, stockers? Like, what is the mix there? How do you decide who gets what?
Yeah, so again, each pasture in the province, they're managed differently, but this pasture here has been always predominantly stocker, heifers, and steers. We try to bring them on, in that 400 to 600 pound range, and usually grazing them for about 150 days of season. We do have a program where we bring on heifers that are to be bred, so we run them with a couple bulls for the summer. But the majority of the animals are basically stockers that we're putting on gains. So, last year, I think anybody you talk to in the grass grazing business, last year was just an absolute dream year for grazing. In the 60-year history of the community pasture, we never had gains like we did last year. And a good chunk of that was definitely weather. But we've been pretty proactive with the management of the pasture, a good fertility program. We do a little bit of rotational grazing, vaccination and protocol and parasite control for the animals as well. So, it really comes down to really responsible and progressive board that we have making the decisions to our success. Yeah.
So hats off to you, actually, for recognizing that when Mother Nature smiles, it is the hard work you do in all the years she doesn't that really pays off in those good years. So that
100%.
Yeah, that really is. I think it is a testament to the year in, year out stuff that you do to take advantage of those really good years. And you're right. Certainly I've heard from other community pastures as well, just phenomenal gains on the cattle last year, which is really cool. We did have that moisture, of course, and some good grass growth, which is really nice. That brings me to my question of the week. And that is, with this sort of bizarre early spring or false spring, this might be, we're not sure. But what is then the earliest start you've ever had to planting or seeding in your career?
That's a great one. I'm actually pretty fortunate. My farm here is sandy loam, so I can jump on usually ahead of anybody else, and I share equipment with a couple other farmers, and so I'm usually one that can jump the gun before them. But I do recall planting some soybeans, I think the last week of April. I think probably usually that first getting equipment out on the field is trying to get some early nitrogen on the wheat while the ground can hold you up. So I can't remember what the date was, but I do believe I did get some on in late March a couple of years ago, and just a little split application, and that definitely had some value.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be an interesting few weeks to see. Maybe it continues. Maybe we are all right to just wait it out. So we'll leave it there for now, Mark. Thanks so much for joining me on the Farmer Rapid Fire.
Thank you so much. Talk to you again.
All right, before we hop to a break, I did promise Mark he forgot to send a shout out to the Eastern Ontario Farm Show happening next week in Lyndsey, Ontario, March 7th and 8th. That one happens, of course, the week before the Ottawa Valley Farm Show. And so, hey, it is the Farmer Rapid Fire here, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to stick with Ontario on our next stop. I'm Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lyndsey Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern. it is time for a product spotlight. With me now, I've got Tyler Gullen. He's the Technical Services Manager, Western Prairies for New Farm. You can't go far without having a discussion on resistant weeds, herbicide-resistant weeds in Western Canada, specifically kochia. So how has New Farm been working on solutions to help farmers navigate the kochia and greater herbicide resistance challenge?
So New Farm's been working really hard on combating herbicide resistance for a long time, and something we did recently was rediscovered a lost herbicide in the process that we coined Duplosan. So Duplosan is a Group 4 herbicide active, a systemic good Group 4 herbicide active. The most exciting part for Western Canada is kochia is one of these 8 herbicide-resistant weeds that Duplosan is still controlling. If you want more information on Duplosan or Oxbow and how they can help manage resistant weeds in your field, you can always go to newfarm.ca/Duplosan. That's DUPLOSAN.
Welcome back to this Thursday, February 29th edition of RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it is the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. For more than 90 years, Pioneer has developed and tested products to meet your local challenges. With new Optimum Glide canola, Enlist D3 soybeans, to performing corn products and industry-leading traits and technologies to maximize yield potential, Pioneer's on-the-ground teams can help you get the right products for your fields. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more. We jump to Aaron Bowman. Aaron, how are you?
I am very good. Yourself?
I'm doing well. I am going to refer to your area as the Hamptons of Ontario from now on. Is that fair?
As you should.
Yeah. So much holidaying happens there. No, but really, how is this week? All of us are going through this weird weather swing from very warm to quite cold and back to warm. How are you managing it there on the farm?
For the most part, pretty good with livestock, and I know you guys have livestock too. It is a bit complicating for them, or troubling for them. They kind of get used to 8 to 12 degrees Celsius, and then all of a sudden get dropped down to the other day -19 for us. So yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster trying to make sure that they are managed, especially the ones in the barn, just because they're trying to keep ventilation, etc., to meet their needs. But other than that, yeah, we're dealing with it, and we drive on.
It is very much a bit of a pneumonia/general bad things risk, for sure. It's stressful.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, and we struggle with it too. You also sort of sometimes just pick one, right? We can handle very cold, or we can handle mild. It's the swing from one to the other that really hurts.
It sounds like you're having the exact conversation I had with another grower the other day. Just pick one, Mother Nature.
Pick one,
like,
exactly.
I don't care. I'll take cold, and I can put cattle out, and I can bundle up, or vice versa. But when you start swinging me all over the area, it's really hard to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we also struggle to adapt as well. Now, have you had time to get all the spring plans sort of lined up in at least your head as far as when we do actually get spring to get rolling?
Yeah, for the most part, being a seed dealer, you're really got to be thinking one step ahead just for other growers as well, getting their seed out and getting it bundles made up as it comes in, if you can do that. And on the farm itself, we've been kind of just toying with some different thoughts and just looking at the markets, etc. So yeah, I guess I'm not ready. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. I think I am, but I'm probably not.
Well, but it's not quite March. We're close, but it's not quite. And I think we have to sort of remind ourselves of that. So that's actually one of my questions, because you are a seed dealer as well. With this mild winter, with this warm up, are farmers really itching to go, and you're going to have to speed up to meet them there, or are we going to remind ourselves it is too early?
I saw a meme or whatever you want to call it the other day, and it's a little boy crying. He's like, "Oh, it looks like the soil's ready." And he says, "Don't worry, the second blast of winter's coming." And I think that's very, very true. We all get excited. We all get rammy right now. I chat with customers saying, "Oh, should I be putting nitrogen on wheat?" And I'm just slow down a little bit. We're not, you know what I mean? We're not even into February yet, and we could get a second blast of winter yet. So, yeah, for the most part, I'm I'm always optimistic we're going to have a nice early spring, but I also don't want to see soybeans or corn going in March. So,
Yeah, for sure. I know that it can, when it seems nice outside, and it seems a month ahead, it can seem like we should be rolling, but still February. And we even get this extra day of February this year. So let's just remember that, everybody. Now, what do you got planned for this year as far as new stuff? I mean, you must have a new idea every year of something you're going to do.
Well, for sure something new, but it's probably not this spring. I'm actually been kind of doing a modified bale grazing on our cattle, and next year to hopefully completely implement bale grazing, cattle out 24/7, etc., and putting in the appropriate water lines to hopefully make this all come together. So really right now the newest thing would probably be next winter will be the full plan and trying to make plans with regards to field layout, etc., and prepping for that. So that's one thing for sure that I'm looking at. What else? We're doing a lot more rotational grazing, and we've moved, hopefully I just actually wrote a grant for a major increase in water, remote watering, etc. So we'll see if we get that. If not, no matter what, we'll try to implement it. But it's always nice if you can get a little bit of help.
Yeah, for sure. And and this is one of the things, so really neat, certainly, because, you know, this is something that maybe we see more of in Western Canada, but there's some of it here in Ontario. But especially with cattle, like water is such a key part because, I mean, they're a large animal. They've got a pretty high water demand. What are you considering with all that? If you got sort of remote, solar, how does that all look as far as what the ideas are for keeping water to the cattle, maybe further away from the home farm?
So we actually have an artesian well that runs 24/7, 365 days a year, and even one more in a leap year. And so, yeah, we're hoping to be able to utilize that and pump water up via solar. And I've been kind of seeing a few of Steve Kenyon, I think his name is, Greener Pastures out in Alberta. He has some ideas, and then a few other guys on podcasts and or YouTube. And we're just kind of playing with the idea of continuously moving water to keep it unfrozen. And then the other one that we're also looking at is actually dropping a line in the ground with an electric line with it. A local farmer to me, Adam Shea, they did it. So I've been kind of watching them closely and chatting with him, how it's been working for him and his wife. And we'll see how that all comes together and finally make the big decision once the ground's warmed up and the cattle are out, and we can kind of make a decision what we want to do.
Mm-hmm. I do like that you're planning for it now. I'll be honest. That does seem smart.
If you know me, my brain never shuts off. So but then it always feels like I don't get it all done when I needed to anyway. So maybe all my planning is for nothing.
Maybe, but maybe not. Now, before I get to my question of the week, what's the biggest driver then for trying something like bale grazing? Is it nutrient cycling? Is it decreased yardage? Is it decreasing the workload? What's the biggest driver, do you think, in trying something like this?
Yeah.
All of them?
Yeah. A big one, too, is so we have an on-farm store. Demand continues to keep going up. And so truly it comes down to another labor. Another one is demand for the beef is going up, and we just don't have the facilities anymore to have all the cattle at the yard. So the easiest one to move out are the big old girls. We can move them out and let them kind of fend more for themselves, as bad as that sounds, within the pastures versus me feeding with the TMR mixer around the yard. Mm-hmm. Having said that, though, like you said, nutrient cycling is way better, and the more I read into it, and the work by Dr. Bart Lardner out there at I think it used to be called the Western Beef Development. It's changed. I think it might just be part of Saskatchewan now, University of Saskatchewan. I'm not sure. But anyways, his work and just and looking at the carbon, etc. So yeah, there's a whole pile of pros and not enough cons for me not to be looking at it. I've always been a little bit leery because I figure if I've taken the time and the money to invest in rolling up that bale, etc., do I want the waste? But working, like I said, I'm doing a bit of a modified test this year of the cows, and I'm blown away with how much they truly will clean up. And I look at the rest as how expensive it is for me to buy straw and spread manure, et cetera, and loss of nutrients. That probably the bit they are leaving is probably for the good no matter what, because it's sitting in the field where it should be. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It all weighs in for sure on the profitability side. And to your point, guess what, everybody? Livestock do an amazing job walking to their feed. So I'll leave it there for now. I know it's maybe not the most popular opinion. Okay, so my question of the week, with this kind of strange spring we're having, early spring we're having, what's the earliest you've got a crop in, sort of in your career to date?
The earliest I have ever put something on was I frost-seeded oats on March the 15th.
That's pretty early. All right. Okay.
And but I chickened out and I stopped, and I shouldn't have.
But see, if only we could know what it's going to be for the next 30 days, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, good for you for trying it, though.
I stopped, and there was a nice, big, beautiful, massive crop for about 5 passes of a no-till drill. And then I planted the rest around it in the spring. They all came up darn near the same time, I'll say. But I'll tell you what, it was on the combine yield monitor. It was night and day difference. I should have kept going.
There you
go. I think that was 2016. I think is the year I did that. So.
Okay. Well, keep us posted if you try it again this year, if this weather continues.
I plan not to. Have so.
So there you go. Okay. All right, Aaron, thanks so much for joining me on the Farmer Rapid Fire. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and I will be back with our Manitoba and Saskatchewan farmers right after this.
Through a growing storm of kochia, cleavers, chickweed, and more, there's a clear path. Introducing Oxbow, a versatile cereal broadleaf herbicide that gets the job done. Powered by Duplisan technology, Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. With flexibility in timing, rates, and recropping options, your path is clear. Find your way on the path of least resistance at newfarm.ca/Oxbow.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by BASF and Syngenta Canada.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this February 29th. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it is the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. We head now to the western parts of the province of Manitoba, and I've got Wilco VanMeijl on the line. Wilco, how are you?
I'm doing well, Lyndsey. And yourself?
I'm doing just fine. So now you're near Rapid City, is that right?
Yeah, our farm's in Rapid City. I live in Brandon. Our farm's in Rapid City, which is about 20 minutes north.
Yeah, that's okay. And how are things this week?
Yeah, they turned a little turn of chilly, but for the most part, everything went really has been great. Like our winter has been absolutely fantastic. This week we sold some calves, so things are looking up there as well.
Okay, so how did calf prices do this winter versus last, let's say, summer to fall?
Yeah, I think I'd speak for the majority of folks here that have had a chance to see the last couple of years. We were exceptionally happy with where calf prices have gone here, and we were ecstatic. It's probably the best year we've ever had as far as calf sales is concerned.
Mm-hmm. And how have the cows done over the winter? Has it been relatively mild?
Yeah, again, for us, we've had probably one of the best winters we could imagine for our feed pile, for our straw pile, for everything like that. It's been a great winter so far. So we'll see how calving season hits us. We haven't come upon that yet, but up until this point, it's been a welcome year on feedstocks. I know for us, we were sitting okay from a feedstock standpoint, but I know in some parts of the country, for sure, feed was a bit of a concern going in, and so this year has certainly helped a lot of producers.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when do you start calving?
We'll start in the next few days.
Oh, okay.
Today's, we woke up to about minus 30. So
Right.
I'm hoping not today, let's say, but in the next few days we'll be starting. We usually start at the beginning of March. Is when we usually start rolling and kind of hit our main stride by the time the end of March hits. That's when we're going full bore.
All right. So that's interesting to me. You've got the January hardcore, so cold purebred people a lot of the time. Then you got your calving on grass, May-ish, but you're somewhere in between. So what's the decision there of the in between part?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're just suckers for work here because we kind of got all of the work that goes with the hardcore folks, because you can deal with snowstorms and cold weather, and then you got some of the benefits of the warm weather calvers here. So I don't know. Maybe we're just hard headed here, but for us it works within our infrastructure. Let's say we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to totally handle our herd in the dead of winter. Let's say. We've got enough infrastructure where we can handle the start of calving to be a little bit tougher, and then when it warms up a little bit, the infrastructure fits for having our calves when it warms up a little bit, right? So for the most part, it works out. It bit us pretty hard 2 years ago when we had 4 straight Colorado lows, and I think I've come to shudder when that term comes up now. After that year, I've got a bit of PTSD as a result of 2 years ago. But that's really a year that it hit us hard. But for the most part, we kind of get away. So we've got enough infrastructure, and but not enough to be January calving. But also it suits because it does end up warming up in April, and we usually get everything done before we get to start seeding. Well,
and that's the other consideration, of course, when you have a mixed operation. At some point in May, the fields are going to need attention. So it does mean that that hard work of calving is over long before you need to get to the field.
Yeah, so that's another reason for it is at some point we want to shift and do some field work here and focus less on the cattle. And so if we can get it all done before that, then it helps us with that. Mm-hmm.
Now, with calf prices being where they are and there being some profit in cattle right now, has that meant that you've held back more heifers to expand a little bit, or have you stayed the course on what your plan was, or have you sold more because you can make some money?
Yeah, I think for us, we're still in that process of what do we do? Let's say where I'm sitting, I'm kind of sitting on the fence of we'll just stay the course. I don't think we'll be looking to dramatically expand by any means. Let's say, and you could look at it and say, hey, might as well take a bird in hand versus 2 in the bush, and maybe get rid of some heifers and get paid for them, and down the road the cycle will return back to kind of normal. And do you expand then when the markets aren't as lucrative, let's say? So I think we'll probably end up staying the course here. We're not going to be in big expansion mode. Our herd is sizable enough. It's a balance right now between the grain and the cattle that's turning out to be okay with I would say a fairly dramatic downturn in grain prices that we just saw over this last number of months. Having the cattle is pretty nice, and selling the calves for what we did here this spring, it turns out to be pretty nice for us. So I think we'll probably stay the course here and see how we can balance both enterprises.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Now, has the cropping mix changed at all with sort of what grain markets have done over the winter? Have you changed your acreage plan?
No, I don't think so. I think going back to that same philosophy we've got on the cattle, it's probably the same on the grain side. Stay the course, find out what works for you, and continue to work that plan. And then you've got less variables that you can wonder about what went wrong. That's the way we look at it. With my brother and I, we both kind of work off the farm, let's say, and so having less variables that we have to navigate and stick handle. We can then kind of look back and say what decisions were good, what decisions were bad, without having all those other variables in place.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Now, what does a typical rotation look like then for your grain land?
For us, again, we'll rotate obviously canola with cereals and feed. Like it's mostly corn and cereals, let's say, and then we rotate it with canola here as well. So that's how we kind of deal with our rotation.
Alrighty. Now I am asking everyone, with the kind of wild weather that has kind of barreled across Canada this past week. I know you guys are in the very cold part of this system that's moving across, and Ontario's about to get hit with it. What's the earliest you've ever been in the field?
For us, again, we're cattle farmers, remember, at heart. So no one ever accuses us cattle farmers of being the earliest in the field. And so I kind of say that tongue in cheek a little bit. So I don't think we'll be breaking any records for anything that you've heard in your program here. Our earliest would kind of be start of May. You know, my birthday is May 2nd, and so if we're in the field on my birthday or right before my birthday, we're sitting pretty good, I'd say. But like I say, no one's ever accusing us cattle ranchers of being Johnny at the rat hole and being there earliest in the fields. So.
Well, I have two things to tell you, Wilco. One, you'll have to listen to the whole show to hear how you measure up, but you're not alone in this. And two, we share the same birthday.
Oh, get out of town.
Yeah.
Well,
so I'll add
happy birthday to us.
Yeah, to us. That's right. I will add you to my list. There's a handful of us, and I'll add you to my list. We'll have a collective birthday hurrah when it comes around. But yeah,
well, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's super awesome. Anyway, it is. So far, I got to tell you, farmers for the most part, I'm a little more cautious than I thought they would be as far as the earliest. I think that bodes well. There's something to be said for patience, because we can certainly get hit with some pretty cold weather even in early May. So going in April seems a little risky. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's again. We'll put corn in the ground early because its growing point is well below the ground, and so that's what we'll probably be earliest with, is putting our feet in right off the get-go. So, but yeah, it's always a balance.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good luck with calving, and we'll talk to you again here on the Farmer Rapid Fire. We travel now to, somewhere in Saskatchewan, and we're on with Chris Bauer. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well.
And where are you today? Of course, your farm is, I've got here Lake Lenore, but where are you actually? Are you actually there?
Yeah, well, I'm just sitting in the lineup at the elevator right now.
Oh, all right. And is the weather awful or not bad for delivering grain?
It was minus 32 when I left this morning, and it's cold, although the weather is okay, sunny and clear, but it's cold.
Yeah, that is quite cold. Now, what are you delivering today?
I am delivering generic canola to the Clavette crush plant today.
All right. Clavette, I have been there. It's a dandy. Okay, so canola in today. How's it looking as far as shipping season for you? Is this the tail end? Is this the middle? How has grain moved off your farm this year?
I'm in about the middle. I wish I would have sold some more for earlier delivery when I had more time in the winter. I feel like I'm going to be kind of rushed now through the June, July, August time frame to deliver what I had priced later on. I guess I was just a little bit too late to the market signals and deferred it out a little bit too far. So I'm not overly happy with some of my marketing decisions, but looking back now, a lot of those were good ideas at the time. Especially on how low things have got.
So I will tell you, Chris, you are in good company. There are a lot of farmers who I think probably feel about the same. There is that. And to your point, hindsight, of course, you can't beat yourself up over making the decision you did when it at the time was probably a good one. But that's right. You gotta just market what makes sense for you, and you gotta take into account of all the factors in the world, and you just have to make a decision, and hopefully you're making a profit at the end of the day. And we had a good crop, and we're making money, so that's okay. But a little bit worried about next year, but I think everybody is in the same boat there. Yeah, absolutely. Now, how was the moisture situation for your farm in 23?
It was good. We were just a little bit below average, but we had some subsoil moisture from the fall, and we had good rainfall in the spring. It just we kind of tapered out near the end, and we missed the top end of the yield. But overall, I can't complain compared to a lot of other areas in Saskatchewan, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now, and what has snowfall been like this winter?
It's been poor. We still have maybe 3-4 inches. We had a snowstorm the other day, but it was so windy and the fields are so icy from rain that none of it stuck really in the field, just kind of all blew away. So we could use more snow, but spring rain would be fine too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Take it how you can get it. And that's the key, is snow would be great, but, some rain in April, May is okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. What's the crop mix you grow?
We're canola, wheat, barley, oats, peas, flax, depending on the conditions. The market conditions and whatnot, but I am going to try some canary seed this year, just to mix it up a little bit. So,
canary seed has the prettiest head of all the crops.
Yeah,
it is a very bizarre looking seed head. I highly recommend everyone to Google it.
We've grown it in the past. It hasn't been for quite a while, actually. So I'm looking to try it again this year, just to try something new in the rotation.
Now, it sounds to me like they've also improved handling of canary seed, haven't they? They've tried to get away with a little less itchy factor on it.
Yeah, I think the variety that I'm growing is called glabrous variety, so it's less itchy, although I think it still is itchy, but not as bad as it used to be.
Well, take your improvement. Step in the right direction anyway. Now, we did have, so on Tuesday's show, we had Lauren Boundy was on to talk about the oat market. How are you feeling about the oat market? It is one that can get oversupplied pretty quickly, but at times is a very profitable one. So how are you feeling on the oat market?
Well, I feel the exact same way as he does, actually, because it can get oversupplied in a hurry, especially if Saskatchewan, Manitoba get lots of rain. I do think that more people are growing oats, but we always grow oats every year just as rotation. If we do a 3-year rotation between cereals, wheat, and canola, just to get a mix, and then so our third year is, if we want to do a third rotation, is always oats, flax, or peas. And so it kind of that's what we do. And I am feeding a little more, like I hear some other people are as well, but I mean, hey, that's just the way it is, I guess.
Yeah, you have to. Now, I mean, so for our friends in the East, that is, to have that many crop types in the rotation, it would be a lot. But you did mention putting canary seed maybe back in after trying it for a while. Is that a purely marketing decision, or is that, fields, particular goals, or trying to get a handle of certain weeds? What drives the decision to maybe bring a crop back in or drop one out of the rotation?
I'm just looking for another third crop in the rotation, so that peas, flax, oats, instead of just wheat and barley. So I think that's the agronomic decisions are kind of driving that a little bit. And yeah, the price has been good in the last little bit too, so that that is a factor. But just a chemical rotation, you can use Avodex in front and things like that. So I think that's where we're kind of looking at, more agronomical more than a marketing standpoint.
Absolutely. All right, my question, and this will be an interesting one because so far I'm sort of surprised by how conservative some of these numbers have been. But the question is, for this week, the question of the week is, how early in your career, what has been the earliest sort of putting seed in the ground date for you? So I'm curious, in your part of Saskatchewan, what's been the earliest you put in a crop?
I've never seeded anything in April. We have started on May 1st in years past with peas, I believe. More so, my average start date is between that May 10th area. Sometimes these last few years we've been earlier than that. But we've had we've had heavy snowfall in mid-April and not turned a wheel till the middle of May before, and that was normal for a lot of years too. So.
Okay, so now, is the calendar flip really what you wait for? Like, if April 28th things are good, would you roll, or do you really wait well into May? Do you make yourself wait?
We'll make ourselves wait, because here you can get some pretty cold weather and snow where we're at here, and it just doesn't pay to be out there earlier for any kind of reason, just because of that cold weather might affect your germination and whatnot. So
that sounds very reasonable to me. I think sometimes we forget what the 10-year averages are for snowfall or for frost, and sometimes it's important to remember what is average for your area. That's for sure. All right, Chris, thanks so much for making time while you're waiting in line there. I hope you do get those much more favorable delivery windows going forward, at least.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right, take care. All right, it's time for a quick break, and then we're going to head to our last stop, which is visiting with Greg Stopps, agronomist here out of Ontario with Pioneer Seeds Canada, right after this.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
All right, welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on this Thursday. It is, of course, the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. And with us from Pioneer Seeds Canada, we've got Greg Stopps. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me back on, Lyndsey.
Yeah, okay. So it's been a little while since we spoke. What's happening in your end of Ontario? Because, oh my gosh, it's a bit crazy out this way.
Well, I think wintertime is always a little bit crazy in the ag world, right? I mean, it's been packed full of meetings. There's lots of new stuff kind of going on, it seems. Lots of interest as growers at this time of year are pretty engaged. They're coming back from their vacations and they're refreshed and they're ready to go. Got guys jumping into shops to do some last minute work on planter equipment and getting excited for the season. So it's a busy, hectic time of year, that's for sure.
Now, I think this, mild weather definitely, I think, is encouraging maybe some of that work in the shop and gets us itching a little bit to get going. But it's early days yet. What conversations are you having in sort of that getting going phase of what questions are top of mind for your growers?
Well, I think, the weather question is a big one, right? Like, what's this year going to be like? We can't shy away from the fact that some are starting to draw comparisons on how this winter has gone to how winter went in 2012, let's say, where we saw really early planting and then saw some drought conditions late in the year. And, we're not at a point where we can predict those kinds of things yet. But I'd say, the winter we've had has been a really mild one. There's not a lot of ice coverage out on the Great Lakes right now. So we are looking at potentially an early spring, and we need to be prepared for that, right? So in terms of the growers who are starting to get a little itchy, that itch isn't maybe a bad thing if it's encouraging them to prepare, right? If it's getting them to pull that planter into the shop a couple weeks early to look things over, that's never a bad thing, right? If they're going to do some of those modifications, let's get them done now, and let's make sure that you are set to go, whether that's, planting your corn in April, or if that's, back to normal planting in May, right? It doesn't hurt to be prepared. So I don't mind a little bit of the itch at this point. No one's really ramming and ready to go, although we are starting to get a few of those questions maybe on wheat, right? As wheat starts to kind of come out of dormancy, when's the right time to start going? Lots of conversations out there right now about putting red clover down and when it's appropriate for that. And all of those things are pretty normal this time of year for us. And I would just always caution, don't get too excited, too rammy. Make sure your soil's fit if you're ever going to go on any of those fields.
Now, and I mean, it's a good point in that for some things like frost eating clover and those, like, it is an early season job to do. So that's maybe not well ahead. It is more the, hey, can I actually put, corn or beans in mid-April? That's more the conversation that makes us go, whoa, 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 whoa. But you are not the first person to mention the 2012 thing in the last little while. And as you said, we cannot predict that for sure, but it was a very dry year. What about, soil moisture conditions going into the winter? Last fall was a tough one for a lot of farmers. Will an early spring help us out on that side if it is on the dry side?
The weather conditions that allow for early planting, I think, don't hurt. I'd be more concerned about overall where that soil moisture is if we don't get rejuvenation of that and some rains through the spring months, especially in May and June. Last year, we had really dry conditions end of May through early June. And if we see that repeat itself on top of an already low water holding capacity or on top of water resources that haven't fully rejuvenated through this winter because of lack of snowfall and because of some of the melts that we've seen that have opened up fields and exposed them to some of that drying out and that drying effect, then we are going to potentially be in a little bit of danger of some of that drought stress. So we're too early to tell yet. I'm not stressed at this point in time. Anytime we get a year that presents an opportunity for early planting, you got to look at the positive too, because early planting can significantly help us increase yield potential, whether that's corn or beans. It does provide us some opportunity. You got to weigh the risks too, because we're never fully free of frost-free days. But we got to look towards some of the positives and not just be looking towards the negatives and reliving years where we had failures. We can't control those at this point, and we can't foresee that everything is going to play out the exact same way.
For sure. And if it is a very dry year, be interesting to do a comparison 12 years different on practices. So that's a conversation we may not get to have, but that's fine. So keeping to the positive, though, lots of exciting things to look forward to this year. What are you hearing from your growers on what they're excited to try for 2024?
Well, there's lots of new things coming for sure. I think there's a number of new things coming in the technology world that you'll see coming out there, right? RNAi technology in corn is really exciting. That's a hot topic kind of in my area where I have been dealing with, and Huron, Perth County, in some of the heavy corn on corn areas for livestock have been dealing with corn rootworm pressure. So those new technologies that are coming to the table with the Vorseed products from Pioneer, but RNAi technology in general, are really exciting in terms of another tool in the toolbox for growers. So there's some excitement around those. There's always excitement around some of the moves that the industry is making with herbicide tolerance in beans. We're excited as we kind of continue developing our Enlist lineup. And then there's excitement around biologicals. There's a lot of talk about biologicals in the industry in general. Growers are keen to kind of try stuff, and I encourage that very much. It's always good to take some of those things and prove them on your farm, figure out where the ROI is and whether or not they're a fit in terms of taking your management practices to the next level to unleash more yield potential or better performance, or even fix some logistical things on your farm, right?
That is a very good list. That's exciting. So let's maybe leave it there, because then we can end on a high note. It always is.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to look forward to in 2024 for sure. So.
Absolutely. All right, Greg, thanks so much for joining me on the show today. And we'll touch base again soon, maybe a little closer to planting time, and we'll see if we're still going to be early.
That would be fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Lyndsey. It's been my pleasure.
And with that, we wrap up today's episode of Real Ag Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147. I have been your host, Lyndsey Smith. And hey, treat for you, I'll be back tomorrow to host the show. Sean is at Commodity Classic, of course, in Houston, Texas, as is Brent Tobin. But Sean will join us from the show, I think, but we're not sure. So I'm going to host. Kelvin Hepner should be on for the Issues panel, Andrew Campbell, and of course, we'll have the beef market update. In the meantime, of course, find us across social media at Real Agriculture. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this Real Ag Radio podcast, brought to you by Authority Strike Herbicide from FMC. Strike twice with 2 Group 14 modes of action and take care of the toughest broadleaf weeds, including kochia, cleavers, Russian thistle, and pigweed. See your local retailer today for more information.